the issues of the day than one of my favorite guests. Of course, you know him as a former congressman in Chicago and former presidential candidate. It's always great to have him on. Always love the podcast White Flag with Joe Walsh. Joe Walsh joins us right now. Joe, pleasure having you on again, as usual, my friend. How are you?
Brian, how you been? Good to be with you, brother.
Doing good, Joe. You've been pretty busy. I've been seeing you on CNN a lot lately.
There's a lot to talk about. It's only going to continue, right? What a crazy time.
Oh, what a crazy news cycle. I want to ask you this. I've never really talked to you about Robert Kennedy Jr. Now, I believe he's a conspiracy theorist, and there's a reason why guys like Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk support this guy. What do you make of Robert Kennedy Jr.? Let me start by asking you that.
I think he's a nut. I think he's a conspiracist. I think he's dangerous. And I think Republican money is backing him to try to hurt and harm Joe Biden.
You think he hurts the Kennedy name by, you saw the hearing, I would imagine, the conspiracy theories, the ridiculous statements that he's made about the possibility that COVID could be used to protect Jews and go after white and black people. I mean, he's hurting the Kennedy name, is he not?
Yeah, but you and I may disagree on how valuable that Kennedy name is. I generally have always subscribed, Brian, to the fact that I think the Kennedy name in America is much more myth than reality. JFK was much more myth than reality. Their old man was a bad guy. Bobby Kennedy might have made a really good president. But yes, even among that clan of men, and a lot of them were bad men. They all screwed around on their women. They treated women like crap. RFK Jr. is like the nuttiest.
I tend to agree with you. With that, let me ask you this. With that being said, and we agree, do you still think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can hurt Joe Biden? If, in fact, it is Joe Biden that's running, it appears as though it will be. Do you think he will hurt the Democrats and it could hurt Joe Biden win re-election?
I do, actually. I think as long as he stays in this race, look, Brian, and I think you might agree with me, we live in a populist moment where a lot of people are pissed off at our politics in both parties. RFK Jr., like Trump, feeds into that. So him hammering Biden on a bunch of BS, I think will weaken Biden for the general election. I worry about that. Trump's going to be the nominee. And I hope every Democrat listening to us right now understands that Donald Trump has a hell of a chance of getting reelected. We better wake up to that. I think this is kind of a two-step. RFK Jr. is designed to kind of weaken Biden before he gets to the general.
I agree. Speaking of Donald Trump's popularity, particularly among Republicans, what do you make of this? You spoke about it on social media, that Donald Trump is beating Ron DeSantis by 20 points in Florida. I mean, what does that say about Ron DeSantis?
It says two things. First of all, it says DeSantis sucks. And I know the guy, Brian, you and I have talked. I mean, he's horrible with people. All of us who know him have known that for a long time. He couldn't sit here and talk small talk with you, Brian. And if you're a candidate, you better be pretty good with people. So he's a lousy candidate. And Republicans all put their hopes in him because they wanted a Trump alternative. But they put their hopes in him sight unseen. Now, but the other thing is, it's not DeSantis's fault because all of these candidates are on an impossible road. Trump is the cult leader. It's still his party. They were never going to beat him anyways.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. What do you make of the investigation into the Bidens and Joe Biden and Comer saying that, well, I hope we have the evidence, but yet even Kevin McCarthy the other day said that, well, we don't have evidence right now. They've been investigating the Bidens for how long now? And, Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that she wants to impeach Joe Biden. Have you seen any evidence to show that Joe Biden committed any crimes? Because I haven't.
None. But Brian, I remember you and I talking before the Republicans took control of the House a year or so ago. We said this is going to be 2 years of revenge, retribution for how these Republicans believed Trump was treated. So they are going to do nothing but investigate stuff. Look, here's the deal, and I don't mean to offend anybody. Hunter Biden is a scumbag. I mean that. And it's way beyond his addiction. This guy is a bad guy. And what he did using his dad's name to enrich himself, and yeah, Jared Kushner, all the rest of them, it's bad no matter who does it. But Hunter Biden's not president. There's zero evidence that Joe Biden had anything to do with Hunter's scumbagginess or committed any crimes. But, Brian, the key is Donald Trump won't let Republicans accept that.
Yeah.
So they're going to stay on this road, even though there's no evidence.
Completely agree with you. What do you make of the fact that Comer, Jim Jordan, they won't release some of these transcripts of these star witnesses that they have? Could it possibly be because it would make them look bad? And you have some of these witnesses maybe that are saying that, listen, we don't have any direct evidence that Joe Biden committed any crimes. They won't release.
Hey, Brian, look, I know Jim Jordan well. We were best of friends. He comes out of that testimony yesterday with Hunter's business partner in private. If that business partner had given up anything good, Jordan would have planted himself in front of those microphones. But he was walking briskly away because there was nothing there.
Agree. I mean, how long is this going to last, Joe? Are these Republicans going to continue to be talking about the Biden crime family without showing any evidence? How much longer can this last?
Brian, January 5th, 2025, when the Democrats take back control of the House. This revenge tour, this 2 years of retribution and investigations, it's going to last till the Republicans lose control of the House. It's all they got.
Absolutely pathetic. If you're just joining us, Joe Walsh, former presidential candidate, congressman, and of course, great podcast, White Flag with Joe Walsh. You know, you talked a little bit about this too on social media. People with big platforms, people like the Joe Rogans of the world, who says all the time that, January 6th might have been a false flag and Democrats might have orchestrated it. And I think it's extremely dangerous for the country when you have people with huge platforms like Joe Rogan making statements like that. What do you make of it?
Hugely dangerous, ugly, despicable. Brian, I wish this wasn't radio. I want to swear so freaking bad. Effing despicable. What a shameful, ugly, un-American day January 6th was. And for anybody not to acknowledge that is despicable. Tucker Carlson, all of them, Joe Rogan. And by the way, I hate to call people a coward because Rogan could probably beat me up. But Rogan doesn't have the balls to have somebody on his show who would push back against that January 6th false flag BS. It's really bad.
Joe, but isn't that, as I like to call it, right-wing echo chamber radio and TV? How often does a guy like Sean Hannity have a Democrat? I mean, he had Gavin Newsom on and shredded Hannity. How often does a Laura Ingraham, a Tucker Carlson when he was on Fox News, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, how often will they debate, say, a liberal or a staunch Democrat? I think there are plenty of Democrats out there that would be willing to do so, but they don't reach out to do that. And I think it hurts both sides.
Yeah, they don't, Bri. And remember, I was in the conservative talk radio world. We were taught and trained not to do that, to just preach to the choir and inflame our audience. I didn't like that. I liked having Democrats on and having good conversations, but they're trained to do that. Rush Limbaugh, Bri, never did that.
Never.
Rush Limbaugh was a chicken.
You're right. He was. I know what you were going to say, and he absolutely was. You're absolutely
never.
Right.
And anytime a caller called in and challenged him, Rush didn't know how to handle it, and he'd hang up on the guy.
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson, the same way. Back in the old days, Tucker Carlson used to have opposing viewpoints on. No longer. That's not where the money is.
And I want to ask you about that because you used to make a lot of appearances on Fox News. Geraldo Rivera recently leaving. Geraldo was pushing back on Trump. Maybe a little bit too late, but he was criticizing Trump and far-right extremists and going after Sean Hannity for his attacks on undocumented immigrants in this country. Now he's gone. Jesse Waters, who I think is a talentless clown, is now in prime time on Fox News, and their ratings have absolutely plummeted. It was always Fox News hosts that would go after CNN and MSNBC for their ratings. Well, now they're destroying Fox News with the ratings. You don't hear them doing that anymore.
Yeah, no, it's look, I was told very specifically, Brian, about 5 years ago, once I came out against Trump, your days at Fox News are over.
Yeah.
That's not their business model. They can't have Republicans and conservatives on who criticize Trump. They still generally do that. The individual hosts, Hannity and the rest, they don't want to go near that.
Yeah.
Again, it's chicken stuff.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I agree. I want to ask you, and maybe you'll disagree with me on this. I don't know, and maybe you'll agree. A fundamental difference between so many Republicans and so many Democrats today. Mitch McConnell last week, we all saw what happened with him. It was some sort of medical episode. You and I are not doctors, but I think we could agree it was some sort of medical episode he had. Democrats all over the country reaching out to McConnell. Thoughts and prayers. We hope you get better. Joe Biden picked up the phone and called Mitch McConnell. But I think of a guy like a Fetterman or a Feinstein, and Republicans calling Fetterman a vegetable, attacking his speech impediments after having a stroke. I just think that is a fundamental difference, not with all, but with a lot of extremists on the right and the left today. People were reaching out to McConnell on the left, wishing him well. And I just don't see a lot of Republicans doing the same.
I cannot disagree with you, my friend. I can't. I agree. Look, my side, my former side, couple things. Cruelty really sells. I mean, cruelty works in right-wing media. The other thing is the Republican base, Brian, has become radicalized. I mean, completely radicalized. They've given up on democracy. They want a strong man. The other aspect of they no longer believe in truth, but they want to destroy their political enemies. Not just beat them, not just defeat them. I hear this from them. They want their political opponents destroyed. And you don't see the same thing on the left.
Agree. I have to ask you about the latest information on Trump's co-defendant appearing in court, apparently trying to delete video camera footage and evidence. It seems to me, Joe, that this is the nail in the coffin. And this person might turn on Donald Trump as well. It wouldn't surprise me if that happened. It seems like the walls are caving in on Donald Trump. We haven't even talked about the Raffensperger conversation, the Georgia situation, January 6th. Now we're learning that Donald Trump, the man that was in power at the time, wanting this camera footage and this evidence to be deleted, apparently, allegedly. What do you make of this new information and the mounting, growing evidence against Donald Trump?
He's, Trump's been obstructing justice his whole life when you really think about it. Look, Brian, you said the walls are closing in on him. Legally, here's the deal. Trump's going to be indicted 4 times. He'll be the Republican nominee next year under 4 indictments. I don't believe any of those trials will come to fruition before the election. I don't. I could be wrong. But so you're going to have a 4 times indicted nominee. But eventually, if he loses on each and every one of these, odds are strong he's going to be convicted. No doubt. Legally, you're right. But politically, every indictment strengthens him within the Republican Party, Brian. And I worry that every indictment strengthens him even outside of his core base. I really worry about this.
Let me ask you this, though, Joe, because I don't find many people out there that voted for Joe Biden in 2020 that are all of a sudden saying to themselves, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to vote for that guy, Donald Trump. I don't think Donald Trump is getting any extra people on his side. Now, maybe I'm wrong with that.
Well, but let me explain what I mean. Then you can push back if you want.
Okay.
I hear from a lot of Republicans who hate Trump and don't want to support him. I hear from a lot of independents who didn't vote for Trump in 20 and don't want to support him. And I've heard a lot over the last few months, and I'm going to hear more after this next indictment. Joe, come on. Okay, this is ridiculous. Now it's starting to look like he's being targeted. Another indictment? Come on, Joe. This is starting to look like the Justice Department is interfering with the election. This is too much, Joe. As weird as that may sound, Brian, I'm hearing that from people who don't even like Trump. I worry about that.
I disagree. I mean, I agree with you to an extent, especially with the case in New York, the Stormy Daniels stuff.
That was stupid.
I agree. But I think, again, Donald Trump did this to himself with defying a subpoena. I believe if he didn't defy the subpoena for 16 months, then I'm not sure he would be in the situation he is in this specific case. You can't ignore January 6th. I know you're not. You can't ignore the conversation he had with Raffensperger. So I think there are certainly far more serious cases than the Bragg case in New York. I would agree with you with Republicans on that. I think that was politically motivated. But I'm not sure that's the case here with when you defy a subpoena, as long as Donald Trump has. In my opinion, he did this to himself.
Oh, I agree with every word you just said, Brian. Completely agree. Yeah. The magic of Trump, if you want to call it magic, is he's so corrupt and so criminal. Mm-hmm. And his advisors, Brian, during his presidency would tell me this. Every day, as a strategy, he'd say and do horrible stuff every day, so that you just became numb to it and you couldn't pick out one thing or two things he did because it's all bad. Here you're going to have a guy indicted 4 times, so much criminality that there are people who think, come on, Joe, they're piling on. This is ridiculous.
Where's Mark Meadows, by the way? Has he been in hiding the last several months? I haven't heard from him. Where is he?
Well, so it sure seems like he's doing what he should be doing. I wouldn't necessarily assume that, but it sounds like maybe he's talking.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see how this pans out. Joe, I know you got to run. I always appreciate it when you take the time to join us. Before we let you go, tell me a little bit about your podcast, who you got on next. What do you got coming up on White Flag?
A couple things, Brian. You know that I'm kind of libertarian in my politics. I'm going to have a conversation this week with the head of the Libertarian Party because I don't like the way that party's going right now. I'm also going to have a conversation with Matthew Dowd, longtime Republican strategist. Mm-hmm. He and I disagree as to whether these Republican voters can be saved or reformed. White Flag with Joe Walsh. Brian, you got a great radio show. Keep at it.
Thanks, Joe. And you have a phenomenal podcast, one of the best around. I'll take you over Joe Rogan any day of the week, my friend. Joe Walsh, thanks again. Always a pleasure having you on, sir.
Thanks, brother. Thank you, man.
Appreciate it. That's Joe Walsh. I love Joe Walsh. I always, and didn't always agree with him. Still don't always agree with him on everything.